seems like only yesterday. Leader Fan Radio Network.
Okay.
And KFAN.com. 1 minute, 59 seconds past the hour of 3 o'clock. That's Central Standard Time. Welcome back. It's a Thursday, truncated edition of the Bumper to Bumper program on a kind of a nice, crisp fall-like. We'll take it in early November, kind of weekday afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I am the host of the program. My name's Dan Barreiro. Guardsy produces the show, and we are going... You're with us the whole way, right?
Today, yeah.
Today, yeah.
Yep.
And the whole way is... We're out about 5:40, 5:45. So we've got a combination of, Vikings programming and then Minnesota Wild hockey?
It is Vikings programming into Timberwolves basketball in Chicago.
Shows how little I know.
Into Wild hockey in San Jose.
Do you know the way to San Jose?
I do know the way.
Oh.
It'd be an airplane for me.
Can you name the singer who I wonder, many singers did that song. It's a Burt Bacharach song, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to figure out who was it. I'm going to guess it was Dionne Warwick.
Sounds right.
Who made it as big as it was. It's a very, very, it's a catchy old pop tune from way back in the day. Many of the kids won't know it.
Dionne Warwick is correct.
Dionne Warwick. But a bunch of other people, I think, that's often what happens is, maybe I can get in on a little bit of that, I think a woman named Michelle Lee had her own version of it once upon a time. I don't think a great singer necessarily, but a bunch of people tried it. Do you know the way to San Jose? And you're saying it's a live and local night tonight on the Fan, pretty much start to finish. But that's why we're out at 5:40 this afternoon. Speaking of the Wild, Russo is in San Jose, right? Dateline, San Jose, California. He'll join us at about 5 o'clock Central Time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Dan's inbox will be open at 4:30. Still time to get in all that fun, obviously. Email Guardsy, JG at KFAN.com. And Sean Salisbury, Thursday regular, is scheduled for the bottom of this hour of the program. That will be at about 3:30. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open. You can reach us via 64686 as well. There will be what I classified on the pre-show tweet day after the day after discussion regarding Decision Day, Election Day 2024, because let's face it, there's going to be a lot of meat on that bone for a while. So we're not going to go wall to wall with it by any means, but we will touch on a couple of things that just might have caught my eye. One of them, I'm fairly certain you're going to see heavily featured on the latest edition of the Bill Maher Show on Max. If he has a show this week, I will be shocked if he doesn't give it some time. But I mentioned that, it does feel like only yesterday. When we generally talk about Calendar of Calamity items, for example, they usually go back a way. Sometimes they go back as many as, 50 years ago or longer. Or if we think of them in terms of decades ago, right? But the Calendar of Calamity, there's no sleeping on the Calendar of Calamity. So there can be calamitous stuff that happened yesterday. Now, that wouldn't be, the anniversary for that wouldn't be until, obviously, a year from now. But in this case, one has been brought to our attention via Dan Minnesota that I do think is worth a minute or two, because it may seem almost mundane, because now we take what it represents for granted. But what's instructive here is this is where it began, something that we now take for granted, and it only happened a year ago today. 1 year ago today. Do you know what I'm referring to? If you followed, you're included in many of these tweets.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you missed this one or saw this one. Any clue what this might be related to?
I don't think I know this one. I missed this one.
Well, here's your headline. Here is your headline on it. So this is a year ago today. What's the date today?
November 7th.
November 7th. StarTribune.com. Twins will try to do more with less.
Oh, I did see this. Yeah, I did see this one.
This is when, well, to be honest, we gave you your first inkling because we predicted it. We warned you about it. The moment the season, we may have even brought it up before they got eliminated in the postseason, that the handwriting was on the wall in Sonny Gray, and we're hearing all these murmurings about what money we're not going to get from the TV deal. And we said, mark our words, this entire offseason will be an attempt to explain away the Twins slashing the payroll. I had no idea it was going to be $30 million, but the handwriting was on the wall. It was more than handwriting on the wall, though, when this story appeared. Dateline, Scottsdale, Arizona, Bobby Nightingale. Derek Falvey, the Twins president of baseball operations, hinted at a payroll reduction for the 2024 season at an end-of-season news conference, and he confirmed it Tuesday at the general manager meetings. What it means for the club's immediate offseason plans: Sonny Gray likely to depart in free agency, and the Twins will probably have to make trades to rework their roster. Twins already have around $125 million committed to next season's roster, which includes their 8 free agents and some others as well. Quote from Falvey: "If we've established one thing about our past, it's that we're going to see creative ways to improve the roster." Now, that's putting the best face on it, because you think creative, go, oh, creative. All right. Don't get too concerned about it. There may be some ways that the Twins could pull a rabbit out of a hat. Falvey can pull a rabbit out of a hat, right? Shrinking payroll. Here's the subhead, by the way. Shrinking payroll might mean trades are necessary to improve roster flexibility. And you could argue that there may well be a straight line between that headline, those headlines, that story a year ago today, and the news that broke, immediately after the season, that the poll ads have at least indicated a desire to sell the team, which is very different than saying they will sell the team.
Right.
To be honest, the Twins apologists have already been on that story. They're never underestimate the ability of the Twins Bobos, the Twins lickspittles, to find a way to clear the field and do the dirty work that makes the Twins ownership folks' jobs easier to try to finesse. Speaking of creative, there's no bounds to the creativity, because now what are we hearing? Well, these values, is that really going to hold up with the challenges now facing this market and many others of similar size regarding regional TV deals? Would anybody even want to own the Twins? Why? Why would you want to own a baseball team at this point? And then, of course, we had the mega payrolls in the World Series, and it was, why bother?
Right.
So the work, like I said, the Twins lickspittles work is never done. There's always, whether there are people in the front office and ownership are even asking for it or not, they're getting it. They're getting every excuse offered to them, even now, at this late date. But it's worth remembering that this is when the whole thing, I guess you could say, semi-officially started. Other than our warnings, this was the first time it kind of appeared in print in any sort of meaningful way, beyond that hint at the end of season news conference where there was already some indication of it. And so here's the question on the table. If the Twins themselves did not take the approach they did, or weren't as public about it, or were a little less draconian, let's say they cut the payroll by $10 million instead of $30. Are we even here when it comes to the poll ads opening the door, Joe Pollad in particular, to the idea of we'd like to get out from under this? It may be that we've run out of patience or interest, and we want to give this to somebody else if we could find it. Is it possible we wouldn't be here? How much is related to the PR disaster that was set then and then was obviously reinforced in a huge way with the infamous Joe Pollad right-sizing the payroll quote, which came when? That came, I believe, early in spring training or sometime in spring training as well. Are we even here?
I think so. I think a lot of it has to do with the PR nightmare and their reaction to it, mostly because they know they're not going to change, and they know the reaction is not going to change, and they probably just got sick of it because weren't there quotes even this summer that, or even in the offseason, that we haven't had any thoughts about giving up the franchise?
I don't remember that. You might be right.
I feel like around something definitely changed in like a 6 to 8 month period. They're thinking. Let's talk again about, there's always a difference between perception and reality. And you can say some perceptions are unfair, but that becomes irrelevant at some point. In the public eye, the public relations disaster that this team currently is as damaging as any, going probably all the way back to the period where it looked like Grandpa Carl wanted to disband the team. Right? He was going to take a check to contract the ball club. Yeah,
correct?
He was going to say, take it off our hands.
I honestly believe this is, from a PR standpoint, the worst it has been since then. At some point, it doesn't matter if it's fair. If you go about this as ham-handedly as they did, I'll say again, you deserve everything you get. But it's important to remember our history. And history indicates that a year ago today, when it was the day when this bridge, you could say, was crossed, from which I don't think there was really any way for the Pohlads to return.
The Fan and 2 Men in a Junk Truck want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our National Cash Contest. First keyword on this Thursday is bank. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword bank.
Let's remember something. Today's commemoration calendar of calamity item from a year ago today, Twins will try to do more with less. I wonder how many times that headline could legitimately appear.
Dozen.
In the Star Tribune or the Pioneer Press, at least, if not more, over the decades. It was literally 1 month, 30 days, after the Twins had won their first playoff game in 19 years. They can't make it up. Now, somebody tried to tell me via text, where did this go? I went too far with it. Hold on a second. Oh, here it is. This is from 651 guy. You are naive, Dan. They set the table with what they said a year ago today. Here's the fatal flaw in that logic for me. It's not like even, I would say, 20% of Twins fans are going to go, they've been thinking about this for a while, and they've been setting, so they let us know there were a couple of hurdles that they're facing. And now, because they have set that message in motion and doubled and tripled down on it over the last 365 days, I'm not bothered by it. That's the fatal flaw with the setting the table. It did them no good. They would have been better served not saying a word of it, right? Now, it would be noticed if there's a $30 million payroll. You can't ignore it. But the idea that they seem to almost champion it and try to justify it to that degree, when I think of setting the table, I think of, well, that made it easier for people to accept it at the end of the process, right? That made the whole thing more palatable. It did them no good to set the table. They would have had, if all along they were thinking that, we don't like this current setup, we want out on it, they didn't help themselves setting the table at all. All they did was create more misery for themselves, and if they cared about their Q scores, their Q scores suffered as a result. It didn't get them anywhere, did it?
No.
It served no useful purpose other than to be mocked and ridiculed.
What do we always say? We're setting up the off day. I'm not feeling very good today.
That's it.
I'm setting it doesn't help.
No.
It doesn't help at the end of the day.
I don't think so.
It certainly didn't help them. They miscalculated that. First of all, I think that's giving them a little bit too much credit.
I do too.
But if they were setting the table like that, they put out the wrong placemats. They screwed that part up too.
So let me ask you this: there are rumors that we may be in negotiations for Sean Salisbury. 3:30 is not going to work for him.
No,
is that
something's
correct?
come up. He texted me at like 3:03 as you were about to tell us that we were the day after leader.
Okay.
And so hopefully we'll get him a little bit later. That's what I've offered. Yeah. We don't have a lot of later because we've got Russo at 5 and we're out at 5:40. But usually when Thursday doesn't work, Friday is pretty easy for him. So
okay, so
we'll have him this week.
It may not be today.
I would bet it's probably going to be tomorrow.
Okay.
because I haven't heard back on the second part.
That sounds fine. And we accept the good with the unsettled with Sean because he's so good with us. He's been so loyal to us the last several years that if it's not today, hopefully it will indeed be tomorrow. And if we miss a week, that's okay too, because there's still a lot of football, I think, left to be played. Twins will try to do more with less. 612 guy, yay, Twins won a wild card playoff game. Who cares? Fake playoff round. Well, I don't think any of us were crowning them last year, but they not only won a playoff game, they did win a round, and you could say it's a silly round, but it exists, does it not? If you,
yeah.
You know, if there are a lot of people who think that baseball has hurt itself by adding another round like that. The advantage it had was that it felt like the regular season meant more, but that's irrelevant at some point. If you've had the string of postseason dysfunction and losing that the Twins had, it is accurate, and whether you want to say it's technical or not, to say they finally won a playoff game and they finally won a playoff series. You want to call it a mini series? It was. It doesn't matter. It's a series. Every team that is, I guess, not seeded top seed, has to go through that process, correct?
Yeah. So, and I'll say the word that it isn't actually a word, but I just like how it sounds better. Irregardless of that, regardless of that, the city was on fire for the team.
That's correct.
You can't tell the people at Target Field that were crawling all over downtown Minneapolis in October, to which the llama said to you, Rocco, in that studio, I couldn't hear myself think. It was such an incredible atmosphere. That's what they had a year and a month ago, 13 months ago at this time. That's what they had with the fan base. That's the public relations they had with the fan base. Whatever that texter wants to think about the series,
doesn't matter.
And if it mattered or not, that's what they had, and that is all gone. Immediately dissipated because of what happened a year ago today and every subsequent move after that.
And even if deep down in the organization you go, God, we really didn't do that much, the last thing you do is want to squander it, right? You say, let's get out of it, because who knows where it might go the next year. As it turns out, we know where it went. A great 3/4 of a regular season and then an utter and complete choke down the stretch. One of the most historic Twins collapses late, pretty much in the history of the franchise. Real quick here, before I want to try to stay on schedule, you sent me some video. Let me see if I can find it. Where did you send it to me?
Twitter, DM.
Oh, you DM'd it. That's what it was. Yeah. Then
You're talking about D-Lo?
Yeah, let me get to the D-Lo. I'm going to try to watch it while... Why don't you describe it to the audience, what you sent to me, what I'm watching, that apparently got D-Lo benched for the end of a game. It's like a minute and a half stretch.
Yeah.
And I'm watching...
In the third quarter. It's the Lakers-Grizzlies. I think last night, the Grizzlies... and John Morant knocked off the Lakers and pretty much ran by them. 131-114.
What color are the Lakers in this one? What's their uniform? I can't even tell.
They would be purple.
They're in purple.
Yes.
Okay, I'm looking.
So this is third quarter where I sent the video. And the caption on the video, it's a Lakers fan account, says, "This is the stretch that got D'Lo benched by JJ for the rest of the game." And then the question is, did JJ overreact? And the 90-second stretch, as you're watching it.
I'm watching it now.
Is about as D'Lo of D-Lo, and you know me, I'm a D-Lobo. Yeah. I liked him more than others. It's
you did.
The quintessential bad D-Lo stretch of poor offensive shot making or poor offensive decisions, no defensive effort, and then I think the last clip is as good as it gets offensively.
Clanked a bad three-pointer.
Yes. With LeBron, I think one pass away, if I remember correctly.
That's true, on the early one, yeah.
Then you should just do the play-by-play, because the deep of where D'Lo is defensively, where the ball is, what he's doing is kind of the fake effort stuff where he's just he's missing. He's not really guarding anybody, but then running really quickly to nowhere to try to cover up for the fact that he's not doing anything. It's about as D'Lo a stretch as you can possibly have, and I would think it would endear you to my guy JJ Redick, the head coach,
that he stood tall.
He didn't wait till Game 6 against the Grizzlies, like Chris Finch had to do a couple of years ago. He did it in the third quarter of Game 8, I think it is, for the Lakers.
Well, the best one I see so far is like 55 seconds. He's out kind of on the left wing, and somebody's kind of going around him. I don't even know. I can't tell who it is.
No, it's hard on the video.
It's hard on the video, but he does what's almost worse than doing nothing. He kind of pivots like, oh, maybe I'll reach over when he clearly is like, well, I just want to make it look like
correct.
I kind of reacted.
Yes.
When that reaction was worse than if he had just stood there like a statue. It is very D-Lo-y. I'm not going to lie to you.
It's the essence of D-Lo.
It is the essence of D-Lo, and it was put together by one of my favorite Twitter handles, Lake Show Yo. Lake Show Yo.
It just cracks me up.
And I would say...
It's just so perfect.
No, to Lake Show Yo's question, I would say J.J. Redick did not overreact. I'm not even sure... I'm not even sure that cutting him at halftime might have been an overreaction to what he did. But again, you're back to the age-old issue with a player like that, right? It's the... Well, you can't be surprised now. You know.
Right.
So at some point it becomes the old... You take the good with the bad, or you take the bad with the good.
Yep.
You know, he can get on a heater and score 18 points in 7 minutes. You also know that he's capable of this kind of stretch where he's not going to help you do anything, but maybe you don't have that many alternatives. So you say to yourself, it's almost like, and it's sad because it kind of lets D'Lo off the hook, because it's almost like, well, D'Lo's D'Lo at this point.
Right.
So you end up blaming the organization for continuing to enable him, which in of itself is kind of perverse, because you could say, well, no, it's on the player. It's still the fact that you have to concede that much good with the bad with D'Lo has continually been why D'Lo is D'Lo, because he's allowed to be D'Lo. Correct? You
take the D highs and you take the D lows.
Apparently so.
When it comes to D'Lo.
So we probably don't have Shawnee coming up.
Correct. We
do have a Done-As item that is sort of the day after the election related that I want to get to, and maybe a couple of other A-section points there. Well, we got some Viking stuff to get into, even without Sean Salisbury. Don't forget the inbox will be open at 4:30, and Russo will join from San Jose, California at about 5 our time. Sean Salisbury generally joins us in this time slot, but something's come up for him. So we'll either get him later today. More likely, we'll add him to the Friday football beast. That's our hope. And he has enhanced our Friday coverage when that has happened before. So I apologize for those expecting Sean today, but every once in a while his schedule gets a little bit full. We do have the inbox coming up at 4:30 and Russo on hockey and your Wild at 5 o'clock this very evening.
Dr. Dan's inbox, you say?
Dr. Dan's inbox.
At 4:30?
4:30.
JG at KFAN.com?
That sounds like a cry for help.
Plea, cry, reminder.
Okay.
We have a lot of late arrivers.
And look, I don't think we should in any way, shape, or form discourage political letters, right?
Oh, we get those all the time.
Even though it's very volatile at this time. And
yep.
We all know the reasons why. That's going to be part of the Done-As here in a minute. But, yeah, it can be toy department. It certainly does not have to be either. I think I made this point yesterday. If I didn't, I'll emphasize it more today. It is my belief that the country blundered electing Donald J. Trump to another 4 years. Doesn't matter any longer what I alone think. I only say it because I don't want to be a hypocrite and pretend now that I think it was a great move. I think there are a million reasons to be concerned. I've laid many of those out before. But the fact of the matter is, we also laid out yesterday, and we're hearing this more and more, I think, from Democrats, is that when you get lambasted to the degree they did, whether the results suggest a surprising affection to Trump or a surprising, is ennui the right term, for the Democratic nominee, or a combination of both, it becomes immaterial. As we called it yesterday, that was a butt whooping. And in some ways, based on some of the analytics coming out, it may even be worse than anticipated across the board. That's my setup for this particular Done-As item.
My only friend, the end.
My plan yesterday and today was to still go to work. I didn't necessarily feel the need for anyone to ask how I was doing. You okay? Need a hug? You be able to get to sleep tonight and get up in the morning? No. First of all, we've kind of been here before, and presumably we can, if we dealt with it the first time, we can deal with it again. But the question comes up because I'm going to read you a few different stories that have made the rounds and become viral and may well not be, what's the word I'm looking for, indicative of this happening everywhere. But the fact that it's happening any place at all, for me, is done as material. And that is said as an individual who believes that the country blundered yesterday. At Georgetown School of Public Policy, officials are offering students Legos, milk, and cookies, and mindful exercises to cope with the election. Harvard Crimson. Some professors encourage students to process in the aftermath of the election, adjusting course requirements in kind. Courses such as Sociology 1156, Statistics for Social Sciences, and Applied Math 22A, Solving and Optimizing, as well as several general education courses, including the Ancient Greek Hero and Popular Culture and Modern China, canceled their Wednesday classes, made attendance optional, or extended assignment deadlines. Economics lecturer Maxime Boyko wrote in a Wednesday email to students in Economics 1010A, Intermediate Microeconomics, that the courses regarding the typical in-class quizzes, they would be optional. As we recover from the eventful election night and process the implications of Trump's victory, please know the class will proceed as usual today, except the classroom quizzes will not be for credit. Feel free to take time off if needed. University of Minnesota, there have been a couple of anecdotal stories indicating that professors have done the same. I think there was some Zoom opportunities to how to cope with what took place. I feel like we've been here before. I feel like we've been here before the last time Donald J. Trump was elected. And I'll just quote to you the comments from a professor down Florida way. Stop doing this. To other academics. It makes you look like an out-of-touch crazy person, further erodes respect for higher ed and trust in academic research, and it's not good for your students. It's embarrassing. You can call it coddling. There have been books written on that particular issue. There's such a disconnect between, because many of these same professors, post-October 7 and all the aftermath, were encouraging students allow their voices to be heard. There wasn't, I think, at the time, much concern about the impact that might have on other students, particularly as some of the protests became a little bit more disruptive, did, in fact, disrupt classes, in some cases prevent other students from going about their academic activity. It was, you're not 12. Get out there and do something. Doesn't this send the conflicting message? This message is you're 12. You're too emotional at your age to possibly be able to cope with this. Doesn't mean you have to love it. Doesn't even mean you have to like it. But the message that's sent every time in the name of performance and sensitivity, we go down this particular road. All of the university system, to me, is embarrassed. And again, I don't really see how you can have it both ways. How you can, on the one hand, say, you're old enough to, now this is part of the college experience. Let your voices be heard. Protest. That's, to me, an anti-12-year-old message. Now, though, the election results don't go the way that many at a university say they should. And by the way, I don't like the result. But the idea that part of the way you express this is to tell kids, take the day off. You okay? You sure you're okay? You may not even know you're not okay. And I don't even know, like I said, what it accomplishes. I know what the logic behind it is. We have to be sensitive. These are tender psyches. But I'll say again, was there any concern about tender psyches, certainly among Jewish students? Post-October 7? Not nearly enough to this day. Were classes canceled at many universities on October after what took place, the carnage that took place on October 7? I don't remember it. So if the only time you're allowed to be sensitive is when your side doesn't get the result it's looking for, you're a fraud. To me, then you become part of the problem and not part of the solution. And again, you do not have to in any way, shape, or form endorse this result or like it or agree with it. This isn't about that you have to clap for it. You don't have to. The American way is you don't have to clap for it. But I just shake my head and say, don't, next time it's convenient for you, tell me, stop treating these kids like children when they want to protest something. Stop doing that. That's infantilizing them? Is that the word? I never know how to pronounce it. We go through this like twice a week. But you can't tell me that on the one hand and then do exactly what you're doing, treating them as if they're 12 years old. Now, I know professors, I'm going all the way back to the ancient times when I was in school, occasionally you get a class canceled or the teacher will be, you say, hey, take the day off, whatever the case may be. I don't remember it being necessarily for political reasons, but there's no consistency to it at all. And it continues to rankle me. It's not the first time we've talked about it, but it has come up again. What's interesting is I saw, because somebody tweeted out of New York that they felt that it was quite different this time than what they remember the first time Trump got elected, that around New York, the feel was almost 9/11-like, which I think would be an exaggeration, I hope, but the person was trying to make a point and felt that this time it didn't feel anything like that, which I would say is to the good. There may well be some bad things that are going to happen here. There's lots of reasons to be bothered by the approach that Trump took. I'll say what I said a lot yesterday. I think a big part of this story is the candidate. You know, how different is it from when Hillary Clinton was the opponent? Hillary Clinton was a flawed candidate, in my view, who more importantly ran a lousy campaign. I think Vice President Harris was a flawed candidate who was put in a pretty difficult position. Anybody who got the nomination in the way that it came down was going to be, in some ways, at a disadvantage. An advantage because their name wasn't Joe Biden, but a disadvantage because of how unusual the challenge was and how little time that you had. But there were a number of mistakes made. She was anointed. There was a flaw there. We're getting, and this is more of what we warned about yesterday, the Democrats have, I've said this before, in the state of Minnesota for Republicans, I'll say it on the basis of this result, no matter how you feel about it, nationally for the Democrats. You can go two ways. You can blame everybody else. Everybody who voted the other way is an idiot, a transphobe, a racist. You can go that way and be pure and say, we're sticking to our guns, and probably give yourself not much of a chance to win the next one, other than you'll be the party out of power, which in itself can be an advantage, as we saw this time. Or you can say, we got some things to think about. We got some things to talk about here amongst ourselves, not the least of which is the racist country elected, was it Obama twice? Did he get elected twice?
He did.
That's what I thought. I'll give you an example of Ezra Klein's a lefty. And he brought up a subject we discussed yesterday, but in a very specific way, with a good example of what we were discussing yesterday about the difference between the liberal mindset, which tends to be my own, and the progressive mindset, which we have mocked and ridiculed without Bill Maher and occasionally with Bill Maher on this show. He says, does Ezra Klein, he mentioned Bernie Sanders' appearance on Joe Rogan. And he says, it wasn't that many years ago that Rogan had Bernie Sanders on for a friendly interview, and then Rogan kind of sort of endorsed him. And you know what happened after that? Many liberals, I would say progressives, were furious at Bernie Sanders for going on Rogan in the first place. I was still on Twitter back then, and I wrote about how, of course, Bernie Sanders was right to be there. That the fact that Sanders could attract people like Rogan was one of the very best arguments for his campaign. One of the reasons he might be able to beat someone like Donald Trump. This was 2020. If you wanted to beat Trump, of course, you'd try to win over Rogan and his voters. But online liberals got so pissed at me for that, it was briefly a trending topic on Twitter. Rogan was a transphobe, Rogan an Islamophobe, a sexist, the kind of person you wanted to marginalize, not the kind of person you wanted to talk to. But if these last years have proven anything, it's that you don't get to choose who is marginalized. This is a lefty. This is a hardcore lefty, by the way. Probably more of a progressive than a liberal. Maybe a little bit of both. I don't want to speak for him. But all of this is sort of, I think, related. It's all sort of connected. But to get back to the original point regarding the done as, I'll just ask, if there were people who felt traumatized by what they thought some of the policies that Biden might put into place, which might seem outrageous and stupid and ridiculous to me and to you, but felt that there could be some issues, starting with the border. It is factual that the border was opened up in an irresponsible way by the Biden administration. It is not even arguable. It is fact. Ultimately, they acknowledged it and tried to tighten some things up. Then we got to the place where we're trying to get the legislation. And yes, Trump got in the way of that legislation. But long before that, as that noted crackpot righty Anderson Cooper pointed out with Vice President Harris during a very impressive and persistent questioning of her during her town hall meeting, that there could have been more done earlier. What if you're traumatized by that? Or what if you think there are dangers to that approach? Do we really think that the folks on the other side of the political aisle would have done anything but mock and ridicule the notion that we're going to give kids some extra time to think about the ramifications of this?
We did not do this 4 years ago. Yeah.
No, nor should we have. But that's the point. And if you're only willing to do it when your side gets crushed, you're a fraud to me. That's not equivalency. That's not false equivalency. That's talking about consistency. And more and more, we'll see how long it lasts. More and more Democrats are getting braver about speaking up. The one advantage to Trump winning as decisively as he won is I think it's giving more Democrats permission to go a little more public and be a little less fearful that they're going to get hammered by the left wing of their party when they bring things up like who competes against whom in high school sports, etc., or even issues like these. What is going on college campuses? They're getting braver, I think, because they feel like, well, what do we, you can get mad at me all you want, but we just got our ass kicked. So we have some things to think about. Now, how long it'll last, you'll never know, because in the days, this is pretty much the way it tends to go after you lose, right? One other quick item. Biden now is getting hammered by more and more Dems. It's the easy second guess, too. He should have walked away after the first term. He would have been a hero. He should have announced it at midterms, blah, blah, blah. And there may be some truth to that. And I've read tweets about, I don't think the Biden family is going to be treated very well by history. And all I'll say to that is, if you are as anti-Trump as many of those individuals are, and you're as devastated as they are by him winning again, let's remember something. Let's not forget. He's the only guy who beat him. And I was convinced then that he was in that cycle, the only one who was capable of beating him, even at a point where he wasn't that popular of a choice. I was like, what, are we really going down that road? Are we sure that's the way we want to go? And I said, well, you want to win? Or do you want to do you want to like live in your academic circles and say, well, this is not really the guy who best represents what we're looking for? We're back to, I think, the Democrats need to worry, both sides really. In the end, it's got to be about winning. In this state, what have I said about Republicans? You can nominate Royce White if you'd like. You can nominate the doctor that you did, Scott Jensen. You can do it and feel pure, but you have no chance in this state. As a party. Zero. Now, they made a few inroads, it appears, at the State House, but I'm just talking about in terms of senator, governor, whatever. Now, Klobuchar might be unbeatable at this point, but you get my point. You have another decision to make. You can pound your fist on your chest about how pure you are. You can say, we're going to have to go more with a centrist to have a chance here, not somebody who's like every 15 minutes said something that at least in this state, and you can be bothered by that, but for this state is going to give you a lot of trouble and not give you much of a chance to win. That to me is the messages aren't that different. They're just much larger. And again, nationally, much more complicated, I would say as well. It's really not all that simple. Some text to get to. And as I mentioned, the inbox, Dr. Dan's inbox, open in a half hour. Email Guardsy if you'd like to contribute. JG, that's JG at KFAN.com.